for 5 minutes. You've got big shoes to fill from your colleague in Florida that you succeeded here.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My colleague from Florida, Mr. Moskowitz, this is actually old hat for us back from our days in the Florida legislature. Look, a couple of things. These hearings, I do agree, typically are fun, but the reality is that regulations at the federal level, and I think it's important to stress a couple of things. Regulations at the federal level, over-regulation at the federal level does have a massive undue burden on small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and micro businesses. These are your mom and pop businesses that are started by a lot of people in our country all across every socioeconomic background. The big players, the Fortune 500 guys, they don't really care too much, actually, about regulation. The area we're seeing that more, I believe, than in any other part of our government happens to be in the financial industry. In the financial industry, the big banks really don't care. I had a meeting, actually, with some of the larger banks, their representatives. And I said, well, guys, the regulatory environment in banking is really restrictive. It's going to cause us major issues. What if we just got rid of Dodd-Frank? It was passed on a partisan basis many years ago. I believe it's probably the worst financial regulatory framework we've ever created. It actually has done the thing that we were told it would never do. It actually made the big banks bigger. And we were told that it would stop too big to fail. Well, we all see now that's not true. What do you think about getting rid of it? And you know what they say? They say, well, we've kind of already built out our programming and compliance system, so it's kind of hard to get out of that. Meanwhile, small banks are being eviscerated. Let's talk about where we are today. In March of 2022, the Department of Labor began to scrutinize and recommend against all 401k plans that include the opportunity to invest in cryptocurrencies, i.e. that's telling small businesses and businesses that in 401k plans that they actually sponsor for their employees, that cryptocurrency options shouldn't be allowed for the employees to invest in. Mr. White, do you view this as an overregulation from the Biden administration?
Thank you for your question, and yes, I do.
Number two, the EPA, under the Biden administration, has actually set a very ambitious and unrealistic emissions-regulated goal for electric vehicle deployment throughout the United States. I just had a meeting with a bunch of car dealers, and you know what they're telling me? They're saying that nobody comes into a car dealership looking for an electric vehicle. But the Biden administration's own emissions policy is force-feeding electric vehicles onto the auto markets here in the United States. Professor Mulligan, do you believe this is an excessive overregulation of the auto industry?
Yes, we looked at the even more gentle regulations through the compliance market was costing hundreds of dollars per ton of CO2 when President Obama said it was only worth $50. So it has Americans way overpaying for a comparatively minor environmental benefit. Added on top of, they're cutting back the supply of electricity that we're supposed to charge these things with. So economically, it's really amazing thing for me to watch, but it's going to be hard for consumers to deal with.
Now listen, Director Chopra is actually in financial services right now. I'll be seeing him soon. But the CFPB is trying to enact Rule 1071, something from Dodd-Frank that has taken them about 12 years to try to figure out, and they finally want to get around to that too. And the desire is to increase reporting requirements of financial institutions when they give loans to small businesses and et cetera, and all these kind of business levels. Ms. Katzen, do you think that the CFPB extends itself into over-regulating companies within our entire economic system? Do you think that?
No, sir. I think they have been acutely aware of the statutory authorities that they have been granted, and that they have done remarkably well in helping individuals who are often confronted with financial documents they cannot understand.
Well, let me ask you this question, because last time I checked, Ms. Katzen, the CFPB does not help people read their financial documents. What the CFPB does is they walk around fining companies for activities that the CFPB thinks that are not helpful to the consumer. But what we also understand, and what I definitely understand, is that the CFPB is unaccountable. They don't have to report to Congress. And frankly, that's in front of the Supreme Court now. And they try to defend having their own director not being answerable to the President of the United States. So do you think it is constitutional to have an agency with policing powers and finding powers under the auspices of the United States government to be wholly unaccountable to Congress? Do you think that's constitutional, Ms. Katzen?
That case is before the Supreme Court.
No, I'm not
They
asking the
had
Supreme Court, I'm
previously-
asking you.
Well, they had previously decided the cellular law case in which they held that the director could be fired by the president. He did not have an at-cause will. And the reason that the CFPB is able to select certain documents that they want to question is because of complaints that come in. And from information that they receive, they don't just
All right, Ms.
make
Katzen,
up their own
I am
mind.
over time. I am over time, and that's an
I'm
interesting
sorry.
point you were making. Mr. White, I'm gonna let you answer because I see you were chomping at the bit, and I think that's gonna close us out. Go ahead.
I'll be brief, Mr. Chairman. I'll just say I've been working on this issue for more than a decade since Dodd-Frank was created. I helped C. Boyd and Gray and others file the original constitutional lawsuits. And while it's true that with respect to the CFPB, the Supreme Court has corrected the problem of a lack of executive branch accountability, from the start, the greatest flaw in the CFPB's construction was making it independent of Congress's power of the purse and allowing the CFPB to treat the Federal Reserve as its own independent slush fund. I'm very glad that the Supreme Court is reviewing that issue this fall, and I hope the Supreme Court follows through similarly as to in the seal of law case.
All right, I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Chair recognizes Mr.